Are you an HR department of one, trying to figure out how to balance task and strategy while keeping up with changes in regulatory compliance? Do you need a fresh outlook on old topics? Then stop what you're doing, grab your coffee, and get ready to recharge. If you have people, you have problems to solve and things to do. Your host is Brenda, a 20-year human resource professional, ready to explore the HR industry with veterans of business and life with fresh eyes and new ideas. Learn about the rapidly evolving changes in employment law around the country, as well as new tactics to deploy and build engagement in your workforce. If you're looking to implement new practices to make your job easier in HR, then this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Best Practices in Human Resource podcast. I'm Brenda. I am your host and a practicing professional in human resources, and excited that you guys are here. It has just been wild lately. I gotta tell you, if you guys are first-time listeners, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here. We've got some really great juicy information, and today's a really fun interview. Today's a fun episode. We need some fun in our worlds right now. So I've got Marissa Q Paine with me. She's awesome. You guys will enjoy listening to her. And if you guys are returning listeners, look, thank you so much. Time and time again, you guys continue to come back, and it's just fantastic. And it just blows my mind, and I just get really touched. So thank you. Excited to have you guys here as well. So I'm here to help share with you the what and the how in human resources, because I'm in the human business, and that really means a greater number of dynamics in the workplace that companies have to balance and manage. But most importantly today, we are going to talk about, we got employment law changes that are taking place across the nation, and I'm going to share with you later in the show how you can get access to all of these articles and more. Also, we've got poster updates, everybody's favorite. Today we're going to be talking about making shift happen. Notice that I put an extra emphasis on the t at the back end of this so we don't have an HR issue here. We've got the HR question of the day, we've got some upcoming events, and I'm going to share with you how you can get my best practices delivered directly to your inbox. Alright, so everybody's favorite poster updates. We haven't done this for a little while. So here we go. There hasn't really been a lot that has updated come the 1st of January. So really, Michigan is the only state that has a poster update that went into effect February 5th of this year. But if you haven't been listening to the show, I'm going to go through the rundown of these states, and then in April, we're only going to do updates that take place within within the last 30 to 45 days. So here we go. If you are in the state of Louisiana, Utah, District of Columbia, Alaska, California, Colorado, Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, New York, Washington State, Missouri, Arizona, Florida, Maine, Minnesota, Montana, Ohio, Oregon, South Dakota, and Vermont, you guys have poster updates going all the way back to January 1st. If you are in the following cities, Belmont, Cupertino, Daly City, El Cerrito, Los Altos, Mountain View, Novato, Oakland, Palo Alto, Petaluma, Redwood, Richmond, San Diego, San Francisco, San Jose, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Sonoma, and Sunnyvale, California, then you guys have poster updates. If you are in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, you guys have poster updates. And then over in Washington State, over in SeaTac in Seattle, you guys also have poster updates as well. Now, if you need a place to get posters, you can visit our friends over at Labor Law Compliance Center and enter in a code called Posters20, and you can get 25% off of your poster selections. And if you haven't yet caught this, you can actually jump over to the Best Practices .work website and go over to our affiliates page, and you'll be able to scroll down. You'll see Labor Law Compliance Center, and then there's the code for the poster and the link to jump over to their company. What's really great about these guys is that they don't send you a lot of spam mail, snail mail, spam mail, and you won't get these letters that say, "Oh my gosh, your posters are out of compliance." You know, if you get that kind of stuff, throw those things away. That's just all marketing stuff, and These guys don't do it, which is exactly the reason why we continue to maintain our relationship with them. And they're just fantastic. So you guys can jump over there, get your posters. Easy win, easy compliance fix. Okay, enough of that fun stuff. Let's take a look at what's going on across the nation. We don't have much going on right at the moment. We do have a couple of things that have taken place. It turns out that the Labor Board has issued a final rule for determining joint employer status. So if you think that you might be falling under that, then definitely want to check that out. Also, over at National Labor Relations Board, they have actually some information and new work rules under confidentiality, cell phone, electronic communication policies that are now lawful. So you're going to want to check those out as well. The Department of Transportation has also issued a notice on the use of CBD products by safety-sensitive employees. So if you have safety-sensitive employees and are part that fall under the Department of Transportation, you guys are going to definitely want to get up to date. Over in New Jersey, the governor has proposed a bill to strengthen discrimination and harassment laws. And lastly, like I said, we didn't have very much this week. Last week over in Virginia, there has been a law that is passed now defining racial discrimination that includes hairstyles and what they deem as other historical traits. So that is what's going on across the nation. All right, folks, and yet another interview that I have been looking very forward to doing. I'm out on the road and on the fly, and this woman literally just flew out so she could get in before a snowstorm hit.
I know.
So,
Something
folks,
wrong with that.
Well, it's like 75 degrees here in Virginia Beach. I mean, I'm sorry, 70 degrees. I don't want to get in trouble with you. Folks, we were literally right before we started this recording, like, we got to stop talking because this is what we should be capturing in the interview. So, folks, I'd like to introduce you to Marissa Q Paine. She's absolutely awesome. She is a change coach, and she does a lot of other things too. But when I met her, we met in New York City, and when we did the Women's Future Conference with the Stevie Awards, we sat on the same panel, and I moderated it. And she was on the board of advisors, and she's just super awesome, and I absolutely love her. And one of the things, and we're not going to have an HR neutral moment here, but she's great at making shift happen.
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. So what we were just talking about, and I know we're like right on the edge of it here, we were talking about how communication in the workplace and just in general is our skills are being eroded because we're too reliant on technology now. And so, we're both in agreement on that. And what we were just about ready to talk about is that, it's hard for each generation, because each generation is starting to lose their skills. I mean, and this all started because we were talking about whatever happened to being direct.
Yeah, in a respectful and professional way, right? Like, it feels like, I think the more and more I go into organizations who are navigating change, so often it's the interpersonal dynamics that makes the change difficult. And it's because they're not having obvious conversations. I'm like, well, did we ask them? And they're just like, no, and it's like, why, right? You're paying me all this money for the question that's like sitting right here, but it's that elephant in the room that everyone knows, but it's a lost art to really know how to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is basic stuff. This is basic stuff for how you and I were raised.
Yeah, definitely.
In our generation, having a direct conversation, asking why something is or isn't, was just part of who we are. So then we got we had computers, and people started, emailing things and instant messaging things. And now, then the concept of social media and online dating and all these things that require you to communicate via digital technology didn't necessarily require you to communicate openly and face-to-face, one-on-one, or even over the phone. And it allowed for different behaviors to start to rise. So
Hmm.
just look in the dating section. I mean, we're presenting ourselves as something other than who we really are.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like that microwave nest. And I am an empty nest. I call myself empty nest ish, right? So I have two kiddos in college. And I mean, even things as simple as resume, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's not until, internship or close to graduation where they're even thinking about how do I present myself? How do I have a conversation about myself? Like that,
Hmm.
they're just not, and they're, great, smart, dynamic, doing things, but the written communication or having to have a direct communication about it
Hmm.
just does not come natural anymore.
No, it doesn't. And then technology is a very effective blocker from actually talking about the
Yeah.
important things. Clearly,
Exactly.
as you've experienced.
Exactly. Because because it's and it's kind of sad, right? Because I think that, right, the emotion is what gets lost. We call it keyboard courage, where you
Oh,
may
yeah.
say things right behind the keyboard that you really wouldn't normally say if I were sitting in the room with you. And that just changes everything. Like it's the thing wars are built by, right?
Right. Yeah. It's super easy to talk about or talk smack to somebody when you can't feel their physical body heat coming off.
Exactly.
It's easy to hide behind technology, and
Exactly.
it really has introduced a whole new level of behavior that in society we really didn't accept as appropriate. People
Hmm.
saying that they would do something and then they don't do it. They say, "Well, I'll call
Hmm.
you," and then there's no phone call and there's no follow up, and that doesn't speak well for for an individual's integrity and
Hmm.
how people are evaluated. So
Well,
I
it's
think
funny you say phone call because that's another piece of technology that has changed, right? Like
yeah,
our
absolutely.
phones are not there for phone calls.
Our phone has replaced the flashlight. I mean, seriously.
Our
Who in the
phone
day of the hell
is
ever thought something like that would happen?
Our phone is for email and YouTube, like
Yeah, I
it is
know.
not for phone calls. I'm
No.
just like looking at my phone. If it's an unknown number, I am not answering. Like there's like five people in my phone, and those are the ones that get answered. Otherwise, you're going to voicemail. Oh, it's so sad, right?
It's
Um,
unbelievable.
and that's why I say it. I think with subsequent generations, the millennials and the Zers, it's that much more. The incoming workforce, it's just that much more dominant. Like we just have to do things different. But I think it's critical that we kind of make our way back to it because as I support organizations in change management and navigating change, it almost always goes back to the human element and the interpersonal
Hmm.
and that piece of it we just forget. Like we treat each other like technology, like robots. It's like, oh, we're announcing a change, we sat in a meeting and we made the decision and we're just going to put it out there. And it's like, did you think about the impact on the humans and how they might respond? And then we're surprised by the resistance. And it's like, yeah, I could have predicted that, but it's like we're thinking like robots, and the data told us, right? The computer told us this would work, but you forgot the human element.
Yeah, exactly. Wrong. But it's interesting, and I've been thinking a lot about this a lot lately, and there is you and I both know that there's over time been the significant shift in leadership development and behaviors, and
Hmm.
I think there's been a really positive shift.
Hmm.
We grew up in an era where our first jobs were, with the owners of the company or the small business or the leaders or whatever. They're from the silent generation, and their philosophy was, "This is what you
Yep.
need to do, and if you don't like it, there's the door. Don't let it hit your
Yep.
butt on the way out."
Don't ask no
And
questions.
Right. Or if you did ask a question, you're asking a question on how to do something, and nobody
Right.
really had a problem showing you how to do it because they knew the value behind that.
Yep.
But now we've got leaders that I think there is a overarching level of confusion that's going on out there. And I'm not one to pick or tear apart any generation or anybody. I mean, I like pretty much everybody, and if
Yep.
I don't like you, you're gonna know about it first. But other than that, I'm a lover, not a fighter. But
Yep.
there's when we had the introduction to Gen Y. I mean, I think that really spun people off their axis because
Mm.
this was a different mindset, and they were inspired to do things differently. And I define inspiration as the way to capture inspiration is what makes motivation come to fruition, which demands actions to be realized.
Mm.
And in the human business, that's a normal dynamic. But then we introduced something new that we really didn't know anything about, and we also compiled it with technology and a different way of going about solving the same problem. But as a society, we weren't really quick to jump on the bandwagon of actually figuring it out together. I think what
Mm-hmm.
started to happen in the workforce, and this is just my observation, was that we started to make changes and accommodations, which are fine because it does come with change, but we still didn't really figure out how to go about doing it well. Thus,
Mm.
wound up picking on the millennials. Now we've got Gen Z in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what
Mm-hmm.
happened is that we've just taken that one little step forward beyond getting away from practices that we know are good. And instead of finding that way, I think we've now just, way to collaborate and figure out the puzzle together and how we can get a unified workforce again. And we don't have to alter too much. I think we've really catered our message to, we have to make all these, drastic changes to reach out. You got to reach
Adjustments.
out to
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z, and you have to advertise to them that way, which I don't consider that being a big deal. That's just advertising for a job. But it's when they're
Mm-hmm.
actually in seat that I think we really get stuck. And then we've now morphed so much that we forget the important things like asking the basic question as to, do you know why this really happened? And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's just slipped beyond us. But I'm very much an advocate of, I'm in the human business, but
Yep.
I'm also more of an advocate on the employer and how to figure that problem out. And
Yeah.
so I think that's where we need to start is how do we teach this new generation to do the things that we need them to do? Because quite frankly, especially in the HR field, and I don't mean to keep
Mm-hmm.
blabbing here, but I'm going to, there
Mm-hmm.
are things that we can't adjust quickly because we've got best practices and laws surrounding all of that. So if we
Mm-hmm.
eliminate what we've always done in the past, which is a major portion of the application, piece of it, because
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z has a short attention span and will move on, and there's a risk that we'll lose that talent gap. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
legitimate problem to solve.
Right, definitely. And I actually think, so for the record, I just want to say that I freaking love millennials and Gen Z. Like, I in the work setting, like what they have to offer is so you know refreshing.
It
And
is.
I think that, now obviously I think I have something to offer as well, significantly, and the generation before me as well. But I think that if we can get to a place where we, appreciate, right, rather than criticize, like that's it's sort of take a strengths based approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that I think what the younger generation is teaching us is reinforced with Simon Sinek's work, right? Start with
Mm-hmm.
why,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is a brilliant idea, period, And so I think that, that the notion of we do it just because, that concept is not serving us, period, right? The world
Yeah.
has changed, the world is shifting. And so
Yeah.
it's not just about, criticizing the, authoritative kind of leadership style. Like it just doesn't work anymore. And it has nothing to do with the generation exclusively, it's like the world has moved on. Like the Industrial Revolution came, like technology is here and it is
Yeah,
not
the
going to
Industrial
change.
Revolution came and it left.
Right. And so, like, if you don't adapt, you die. Right. And so, if
Yeah,
you keep the same leadership style and you're resisting, right, which is again, change management 101. It's sort of like you got the early adopters and then you've got the resistors on the other end of the spectrum from a leadership perspective. It's like you got to adapt. Like, it's not the same anymore.
yeah,
And so, really starting with why, and that question is so beneficial to everybody, right? It's just like
yeah,
the value that diversity brings to the table because we don't all think alike. And so, this new idea and this new frame of mind, the left brain with the right brain, we're better because of it. But if you don't, if you hold on to it for dear life, then yes, that's where problems come in.
yeah. I totally get what you're coming from. So 17 years ago, when I worked for a major corporation, when we had during our interview process or application process, we had one of those, I wouldn't call it a personality test, but it's a values-based test. And it
Mm-hmm.
was formulated by an industrial organizational psychologist. And he came in and he asked questions that helped to determine, are you a cultural fit in relation to the values that you hold? And
Mm-hmm.
it was a really good way to measure. But this gentleman came in and he applied for a very basic frontline position, sat down at the computer. It could take anybody, 30 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes to complete. Well, the guy came back to me about 15 minutes later, and I looked at him. I said, "Are you done?" And he goes, "I don't know." He says, "I haven't even started yet." And I said, "You haven't? Why?" I said, "Is there something wrong with the computer?" He says, "Yeah, there is." And I said, "Okay, so I'll be right over." And I walked over, and he says, "I can't figure this thing out." Now he's probably about 65 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I walk over to the computer and I said, "Okay, show me what you're doing," because I could see that the everything was up. So he
Mm-hmm.
goes, "Okay." So he takes the mouse and he puts it on the floor. He removes
Mm.
his shoe and he's trying to use the mouse with his foot like a sewing machine pedal. And
Oh.
I looked at him and I said, "Have you ever used a computer before?" He says, "Not a day in my life." I said, "I'll tell you what." I'll tell you what, I'll help you out. How's that sound? So, yeah, so we had to take the mouse and put it on the desk. And basically, what I did is you answer the questions and I'll click the answer, and we put them through. And,
Wow.
and I explained to him, I said, "So if you've never used a computer before, I said, how do you think you'll be able to adapt to, everything that we do? You have to use a computer for." And he kind of looked at me and he says, "I ain't going to get this job, am I?" I'm like, "Well," I said, "I can't tell you yes or no." And we're kind of laughing about it at this point. I said, "But I think you might have a challenge ahead of you." And I kind of felt for him. But conversely, the other day I was having a conversation with somebody who was interested in getting some leadership, coaching one-on-one session from him. And he is a millennial, and he's kind of like in that mid-range. He's not, in his mid 30s to, creeping towards his 40s millennial. He's like right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about some of the employees that work under him, and he's just frustrated. He's like, "I don't get it." And I said, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "What?" And I said, "Do you just want to push a button to make it go away?" He goes, "Yes." And I go, "Okay." That's not going to happen. You actually have to draw it out of you, and you have to get rid of it, because you can't just switch them off and plug them in and power them back up again. I said, "These are people, and they come in many shades of colors." And he goes, "No kidding." And I said, "Yeah, the button on your phone isn't going to work, dude." He goes, "God, this sucks." I'm like, "I know, but you'll get through it."
I love it. And it's so interesting because it took, I'm really probably on the older edge of Gen Z and not Gen Z. What do I mean?
Yeah,
What's my
we're Xers.
generation?
We're
X, that's what I meant. I'm like, that
Yeah,
doesn't
I know
sound
how old
right.
you are. Yeah, we're not far apart. We're Xers, because if you get too old, I'm right behind you, and that's not happening.
I'm an Xer. And so, and the thing about it, it's like the way the kind of, traditional corporate culture has shifted, right? When I
Hmm.
was in corporate space, I hated it. Like it was stifling to me. Like I couldn't
Really?
breathe. Like Navy suit and like I could not, I didn't thrive there, right? And I
Hmm.
ended up finding my home, spent the bulk of my career before starting my business in the nonprofit sector because it was just a little more, it was lighter, it was a little more flexible in terms of wardrobe and how you got to show up. And I just didn't want to feel like I couldn't be myself for 8, 10, 12 hours a day every day. That was stifling to me. And I think that today's culture is has shifted quite a bit, right? Like
Yeah.
if I were looking for a job now, I think I could definitely find corporate cultures that where I could be authentically me. But again, and I think again that's the evolution, right? And that's a good thing. And
Hmm.
so I think that so often people view change, right? It's hard, right? And it is, right? It's different, right? So, but if we view it as hard versus different, and kind of focus on the part that makes us uncomfortable, and leaning into that discomfort is not fun. I got to learn something new. I got to do something different, right? I was used to this. And, but there are usually, right,
Hmm.
advantages to it as well. I think that
Hmm.
because we've also had bad experiences with it, that kind of leaves a bad taste and makes it difficult. But I'm always like, let's lean into it. Let's see what happens, make adjustments. But depending on your style, that's not many people's idea of a good time.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah, I hear you. When I was in corporate, I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate to work for 5 Fortune 500 companies. Majority of
mm,
them, were out in the field. But, and I appreciated, multi-unit management, and the type of work that I did, mostly in retail or service
mm,
industry,
mhm,
like, when I was at ADP. And, I got to appreciate strong leadership, strong focus, strong, like partnerships within each division. Every company, they're like, look, it's like your family. Everybody's got a couple real wild ones in the family, and things kind of get a little strange, but it's the same thing
there's
at
more
work
than a
too.
couple in my
Yeah.
family.
Right. But it's the same thing, and it's just like you just have to work through those things, and it wasn't horribly bad, but I had the benefit of real structured approach towards getting things done,
Hmm.
and I've seen that. That's a lot of the stuff that I get to bring to my clients, and when I was with ADP, what I did there, it was my dream job come true, and
Nice.
oh my God, I loved that job, but what started to happen for me is that I started to kind of outgrow the repetitiveness of some of the work, and I wasn't
Uh,
really kind of able to get into doing some of the more juicy stuff that I really appreciated doing, and then there were some things that shifted with leadership that I wasn't a really big fan of, and
hmm
decided to take into another direction. Well, I'll tell you what, when I went back into the consulting world, but doing it independently, like what I do now, and starting to build these multiple aspects of my business. And but I'll tell you what, when here's something that a lot of people don't acknowledge when it comes to a shift that takes place
mm.
is the mourning process of something that you really truly loved. Even though
Oh,
I left ADP and it was my choice to do so,
yeah.
I still mourned that job for years, and
Yes.
I just loved it.
Yes. Yes. That is, oh my gosh, like, yes. I do a lot of sort of either board or team coaching
Hmm.
through transition. And I think that you just hit on like, oh my gosh, right? That grief sort of
Hmm.
process. I think you people have to actually literally go through kind of the stages of grief. And again, that's why I say when leaders are planning change, right, they do the project management side, the data side, the part that makes sense on paper
Mm-hmm.
without really regarding the human element aspect of it. And that is really what derails, right, what would ordinarily be a good change initiative. And I think that the majority of the time when I go in and work with boards and teams, there's like, kind of ghost roles, right? You have like, oh, I'm the chair, I'm the department lead, I'm this, I'm that. And those are like the external roles. And then you've got like secondary roles sort of underneath that. So I'm the nurturer, I'm the taskmaster, right? But then I think underneath even that are like these kind of ghost roles or like
Mm-hmm.
secret roles that aren't really bubbling up. And a lot of times that's from stuff from the past, and it's not often unlike family stuff, right? Like there's this history.
Yeah.
There was this beloved, VP that, lost their job, and it was 2 years ago, but it was never really dealt with, and I was never quite the same. Or, like
Mm-hmm.
there's this stuff that if you don't really handle it well, it doesn't go away. And we're in the meeting today
Right.
and we're talking about this, and we think we're talking about this, but someone's upset about something else. But it's that past that's like coming back to haunt.
Yep.
Which again, you take that and layer that with a, Gen Z manager who doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have the communication skills to really navigate that, and you have just made, shift stew like just like a mess.
Shift stew. Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Now, folks, you know why I love her so much. Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh.
Right.
And I think too that, as we're working to it, first off, I think there's also a significant lag in developing employees. But when
Ooh.
companies do work to develop their employees, they don't take into, I don't think that they sit down and fully assess what an employee enjoys, what they're good
Mm-hmm.
at, and where can they or innately grow, where can, because look, when it comes to working with numbers, I've always been upfront about this. I'm dyslexic. My threes, my sixes, and my eights, they all look the same. I am not your girl to be crunching numbers a lot. I may
No.
make you really wealthy on paper or broken reality, but but I have ways working around it. It's not my favorite thing to do. So if somebody were to, try and convince me to really dig into compensation, it's not a good fit for me, and I can't fix that. I can't change it.
Exactly.
You can send me to as many dang math classes as you can. There's nothing that's going to fix that. That's who I am. That's
Correct.
how I'm wired. But,
Exactly.
but when I was with ADP, what I loved about that job partly was that number one is that my boss trusted me because I constantly proved my value to the company. I got the job done and I was a top performer, and all you had to do is look at my KPIs. So I
Mm-hmm.
understood the job and I knew it needed to be done, and I got after it. And that
Yep.
allowed me exposure to do cool things. Well, I love to travel for work. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love it. It gets me out of, being in the same area all the
Mm-hmm.
time. It introduces me to new things, new places, new experiences, new people, and it's
I
it's
see
real
that.
world education. And that was
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the greatest things that I missed, because I knew that I had the privilege to travel because I was trusted, because people
Mm-hmm.
had confidence in me, and you know what, that made me feel good. And
Nice.
when that went away, that was a huge piece of the mourning process for me.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Hmm. Yeah, and that speaks to the motivators, right? The difference between kind of motivation and satisfaction. That
Right.
I think those kind of extrinsic motivators are very different than the things that satisfy the pay, the benefits. It's
Right.
more than just that, right? The thing that you remember and that you love about a job is sort of what's the growth opportunity, like how is this feeding my soul, like how am I
Yes.
growing, those kinds of things, the stretch assignments, the development. That's what motivates me. Like it's not
Yes.
the money. I say it all the time. You've got miserable attorneys and very happy attorneys, like it who bill whatever an hour. If it were just the money, you wouldn't necessarily have that, but there's the
Right.
motivation matters, which is why that start with why, right? And helping, the millennials and the Zers sort of understand and be connected to the work, and sort of the
Mhm.
rationale like that can go a long way, because they want to be connected and have purpose for what they're doing. And it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, and they'll probably have something to add to, the conversation when they have that, and they'll go hard for it, like stupid hard with energy that I don't even understand.
We had it too. We still have it. It's just
I
matured. That's
do.
all.
Okay, it's matured
It's
energy.
matured. It's matured. It's refined.
Matured energy that goes to bed at 8:30, but okay.
Yes, but it gets up at 5 a.m. So let's not
True.
cut it short yet. Okay.
So true. So
That's right.
true.
Yeah. So, and I think that with this technology, and I think what is an ingredient to your shift stew is that with we have exposure in life in a different way now. I mean,
Mm.
we can literally never
Oh my
leave our
gosh.
community, and we can travel the world virtually.
Ah,
And with the onset of social media, it's not the same, but with the onset of social
yep.
media, what we have adapted ourselves to is living up to everybody's highlight reel, not
Mm.
realizing what's really going on behind the scenes. And
Mhm.
people post like Instagram. Instagram to me is fun. It's
Mm.
not my business driver, but it's a fun place to be. And
Mhm.
people are they show pictures of their handbags and their cars and their motorcycles and their weapons and their lifestyle and physical accoutrements and all that stuff. But what you don't understand is that you're like be looking at a BMW online, and some guy thinking he's everything in the world, but what you may not see is there's that BMW may be, and I'm not saying this is for sure, but
Yep.
that car could be about 3 months behind in its payments, and they're in
Yep.
arrears.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
reality.
Yeah. Yes,
So we live in
definitely.
very much this. If I want it, I want it now, and I know I can get it with the push of a button.
Mhm. What do you think about LinkedIn? Do you think, as a social platform, I think that that's changing, like it's evolving as well. Like it used to be sort of the place for professional network, and like I think now professional network is like it's shifting. Like it's not Instagram, but it's not,
Mm-hmm.
corporate either. Like it's definitely sort of look how fancy I am. Look at my, I'm a thought leader. I'm fancy. So it's there's not a lot of space to just be, right?
Yeah,
Um, real. So it's like where's the real space? And social is not the place for it. That's actually in real human relation.
yeah. The
Which
real
if you
space is
don't
sitting at the bar and having a cocktail and getting to know each other. That's where the real space is.
exactly, which is lost art.
Yeah.
Um, or exhausting for introverts. It's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
We'll have you on for that show later. But as you are an
please.
introvert, I know you are. We're walking after this event down the hallway, and Marissa just went from like, so you see her now, or what you hearing now. That woman buttoned up faster, and I'm looking at her. I'm like, and I'm trying to think, like, did I say something to piss her off or something? So I asked her, I'm like, are you okay? And she looked at me. She goes, baby, I'm an introvert. You know what this is about. And I'm like, enough said.
Oh my gosh, right?
You were so
'Cause
funny.
that's like the energy is, it expends like a significant amount of energy. And after that, I am like toast. It is like sofa, ottoman, Netflix, here, wine, let's do it.
Yeah, you don't just go inward to recharge. You go deep inward to recharge. I've never seen anybody shut down as fast as you. I mean, there's very few people, and you're just still nice and pleasant. You're like, like, oh Lord, what did I do? But
Not a
it
single
was funny.
thing.
I know it was. We cleared
I
it up.
keep
It was
saying
great.
I'm going to create like a conference for introverts. I have not, like, I don't know
Nobody will
what
say anything.
what it entails, but it's like we like to be stimulated, but there's got to be, a break to kind of
Yeah,
detox when we go back in. Like, But oh my gosh, when it's like boom, 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 I'm just like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. But but so this goes back to your question. So this is the real thing that people don't get to experience on social or
Hmm.
and network type of things. And yeah, I agree with you that LinkedIn is changing again. Now, a couple episodes ago, we had Kate Payne, and she is a LinkedIn
Mm,
specialist. She's a branding specialist. She's awesome.
yay.
And yeah, she's really great. And so, we talked about some of the varying changes, and I agree with you, it's shifting now. But what happened when it first launched, and I remember getting my profile up there like within the first couple of months, and it
Yep.
was the expectation was is that you connect with people, and now you've got a direct line to communication. Well, that's when some of those behaviors that we talked about earlier, people start to, they disappear behind technology and they don't answer you, and and
Hmm.
it's a digital connection. Let's get that clear. This is a digital connection. This isn't
Hmm.
an interpersonal connection. And so
Hmm.
then we started
Ooh,
to
that's
shift
good.
where, yeah, people wanted to shift it to where, all of a sudden you're seeing these hot selfies. And what was really amazing was that the LinkedIn community was actually chastising those people, and the culture of LinkedIn stopped, for the most part, that from happening.
Hmm.
And it's no longer about political stuff. It's really no longer, I mean, it really true is. But what's happened now is, and then it was, LinkedIn open networking, or that lion thing where everybody's just like, yeah, it's like,
Yep.
running around in a baby shower and trying to collect as many beaded necklaces as you can or whatever, right? Just, it's a popularity thing. It's like, oh, I have 10,572 connections. It's like, well, how many of them do you actually
Do
know?
you actually
Let's
know? Do
talk
have you
business.
actually connected with, right?
Exactly. Right.
Hmm.
Exactly. So now is that you see LinkedIn as what I think is that you see LinkedIn as a culture of storytellers, and they're telling their story about somebody else. And yes, there are these new buzzwords that have come up, and they're old and stale. Thought leader,
Hmm.
and and it's shifting again because it has to itself remain effective. And so I think the more people recognize that they have to find a way to stand out, just like in marketing, and you do a great job with your marketing, you find a way to stand out, and everybody has to find that voice. And
Hmm.
now it's just really becoming this, I think, this interesting melting pot. It's going to be interesting to see where it's going to land next,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
people are getting away from the buzzy stuff, and I think they're
Hmm.
becoming more creative and more individualized and more unique, which I think therefore drives the desire to really make a connection with somebody.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. I actually think you can, um, you know, be human in tech, even through technology, right? Like
Yeah.
like I said, and it could have just been the corporate space that I was in, but for me, authenticity is a value, right? And being aligned and being my natural self in every environment is important to me. And so that's how I show up everywhere, right? Including my
Mm-hmm.
digital footprint.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, beautiful branding that I pay a lot of money for, right?
Yeah,
Great
you do a good job.
pictures,
Yeah.
makeup. But I tell people all the time, like, I'm like, that's branding. That is like makeup, hair, photographer, right? And then I also have, right, you'll see me, like, I had the flu last week, and I will show up that way as well. And trust me, it was not branding and it was not pretty, you know?
It was an
So
experience.
I try to bring that balance. I'll
Yeah.
show both. I was just like on my trip this week. I was just like, well, I'm back up. I didn't get my hair done last week, but here we go. And I think that's what attracts people, right? To me, the people that are supposed to be attracted to me get attracted to me, and that's great, right?
Yeah.
It does what it's supposed to do, and
Yep.
it weeds out those that don't like that and attracts those that do, which is great.
Yeah, and that's the purpose. But what's really cool is that you're so consistent at it that when you do show up, one, people already know what to expect, and number
Mm-hmm.
two, you really do honestly represent what they see online.
Mm-hmm.
When
Oh,
they
that's good.
see,
Thank you.
yeah, when you see your brand and they see these images and they see your messages and they hear you from your video clips and the things that you post out there, because I followed you since I've met you, but when you
Oh,
show up, you show up just as you portray yourself,
I'm
and
the same person.
right, and in a
It's not a bait and
world,
switch. Mm-hmm.
no, it's not a bait and switch, and in a world
Mm-hmm.
where nobody else does that, you
Mm-hmm.
stand out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do the same thing. It's like
Exactly.
when people meet me, and I've made a conscious effort of this. I'm very aware. I mean, I'm aware of who I am and what my capabilities are. I'm aware of my shortcomings, and I make mistakes just like anybody else.
Oh my gosh, that's a
But I
whole
don't.
nother show.
Right. Right, exactly. But I don't show up any different anywhere else than what you hear me on this podcast.
Air hug.
Yeah.
I love
Air
you.
hug. I love you too. I love
So
you too.
how are you? How are you with change? Like what, major change, major shifts. How are you with that?
So, it's funny you asked me that question because I'm in the process of actually writing a workshop on it right now, and
Ooh.
when I write a workshop on something, I'm also confronted with the very same things that I teach.
Mm.
And if I don't get real with myself first, I can't go out there and teach it
Oh
to
my
people because then I'm a
gosh.
hypocrite, and I don't
Oh
do
my
that.
God, Brenda. Like, oh my gosh. We're the same person. I Oh my, like I'm planning a self-care sabbatical, like a women executive women's retreat next January. And I'm
Hmm.
just like, I have got to get away and do my work before I do that because I can't do it unless I've done mine. Like
Yes,
we're the same
exactly.
person.
Yeah, no, it's cool. We're like sisters. And we're twinsies. Anyway, so when I go through this process, right, when there's change, like I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, and there's nothing wrong with the people up in northwestern Pennsylvania, but we are stubborn,
Mm,
and we just are, and we're not very receptive to change, and
mm,
we don't like it. I mean, I grew up in a post-Korean War town,
mm,
and if there's a lot of personal emotions and dynamics that come with change. Like we don't like how it feels. It's uncomfortable. There's a lot of ambiguity around it. We don't see the
mhm,
benefit of the value. Those are all just normal, natural conversations. And I go through it too. There's some changes that I'm quicker to buy in on. And then there's other changes to where I can recognize change for the sake of change. I can see when
mhm,
that happens.
mm,
But I am still of that person who will believe it's like, give it an honest shot. If it
mm,
doesn't work, you have a voice, use it, but give it an honest role. And where you can see where you can improve, then make your recommendations. And you've pitched your ball, you've done your job. If you
mhm,
see where it doesn't work, now you can come back and say, okay, this isn't working here, and here's the reason why. Here's my backup for this, right? But when I see change, that probably the one thing that I get internally most cantankerous with, and it moves very quickly for me, is that when there's a shift or a change in authority, because I've developed that relationship with somebody, be it distant or far or whatever, and now I have to get used to somebody else, and I don't trust them
mm,
right off the bat.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
But I recognize that in myself, and it's like, give him a shot, give him a chance. It's not the same thing. Suck it up, Buttercup. You're just gonna have to deal with it.
mhm,
Like all this little repetitive thing in my head, and then once I'm past that, within like a half hour, I'm good. And it doesn't
mhm.
take me very long, but it does, it does exist for me, and I think it's perfectly natural. Everybody goes through stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I am for me, buy-in matters. Like the difference between my ability to shift depends on whether I believe in the change or not. Like if it makes sense to me and I think it's a good idea, I'm all for it. I'm probably leading it, right?
Yeah.
But if it's something happening against my will and I think it's stupid, then maybe not so much. Then I'm definitely resistant and I'm gonna what I'm told is, right, I'll ask questions, right, until you see it my way, because obviously this doesn't make sense.
See, that's
Which
being an
is
influencer.
horrible. It's horrible, right? This is why I am unemployable. Because
It's
who
my way or
wants
the
to
highway.
listen to that over and over and over again? I'm probably that person. Like, as I've aged, I've gotten more mature, but oh my God, in my 20s, it's like, girl, let it go. Like, this is what we're doing. Move on. And it's so funny to see it now, right? As I coach teams, and it's just like, well, what's it going to take, to move forward? And like I said, that's where I'm like, that healing process is important and cannot be underestimated. Like, and a lot of times people can't shift until that spot, right? That
Mm-hmm.
moment is actually validated, right, for a person. And you can't really make a move until it's like, no, I might not necessarily agree or get my way, but this has to be acknowledged and validated before we can, just build, a nice little house on this terrible foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, that's fascinating. And again, that's the human element. And so I think that the more I often, when I do change management workshops, I start there with people to sort of talk about how do you shift, right? And what does it take to get you on board, right? So that people are sort of in that mindset, right? We take it from the, academic level to the human level, because that's really what it takes. And then once you can talk to a person and when you know and understand their motivators and you can talk to them at their level of motivation, then
Mm-hmm.
you've got a better chance of making some progress.
Yeah,
Making
absolutely.
shift happen.
That's that's right. Emphasis on the t at the end.
Exactly.
But
I love it.
I think but we hit I think the subject on the head, but we didn't really enunciate it, and that
Mm,
is, in order for you to make any kind of adjustment happen in your world, you've got to take the element of me out of it. And I
ooh,
remember when you asked me the question about how you deal with it, one of the things that I had struggled with, and my favorite mentor on the planet, we just had lunch for the first time in like 10 years, we saw
mm,
each other when I worked with Tom, and Tom is part of one of the books that I wrote, called Holy Cow, I Have to Talk to My Boss. And it's all about how you can build a better relationship with your boss by understanding four major components of it. And
mm,
so, this whole book was written around my experience with Tom. And I came up to him and I had a legitimate concern. And man, was I passionate about it that day. And Tom is just a genius. I mean, like half the stuff that comes out of his mouth, I wish I could convert his air and his breath into gold because it was just
nice.
amazing. Yeah, he's that guy. And so he looked at me, and this is when we worked at CarMax together, and he said, "Let me ask you one question." I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Is the solution to this going to help us sell more cars?"
Mm.
And I went, "Damn." And I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Seriously." He says, "I get it's a big problem to you, but how does it work in solving our primary business objective? This is our number one goal here is to sell more cars."
Mhm.
And I was just like, "That's brilliant." And I said, "In the grand scheme of things, it's not that big." He says, "But I recognize, Brenda, it is something that needs to be addressed. So here's the question for you. What do you recommend doing it?" And that was what he was the best at,
Mhm.
was having you bring forward a potential solution to solve a problem. But it was the first time I ever experienced, and I was about 30 years old at this time, the
Mhm.
first time I ever experienced that everything that I was frustrated about was
Mhm.
because of what I was frustrated about, even
Of
though there was
course.
a problem. But I was trying to address my frustration and not the actual issue.
Mhm.
And he
Yeah.
taught me that in a very gentle way.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's often a kind of a us, like I love that, like not centering on self because
Yeah.
again, you've had time to process it, you've been thinking about it, you're living in your island, but the people that
Yes.
it impacts the most aren't in your brain.
Yes.
And you have to sort of go sit in their seat and you right think about it from their vantage point. Like, what does this
Hmm.
have to do? How is this going to impact? What are they going to think? Right? I tell coach managers all the time, like you have to communicate early and often, right? Okay, so we've been thinking about this change. We're really thinking about this change. We're curious what you think, right? Oh, we're
Mm-hmm.
working on this change, right? Oh, guess what? The change we've been talking about, here's what we've been talking about. Oh, the change, it's coming up soon, right? Oh, the change is here, right? Like, because all that time that you're planning, nothing is happening on my end. I didn't hear a thing about it, right? And then you're like, oh, change, go now, right? You had
Right.
9 months to like think about this, process it, and then you just want to give me 2 weeks, and I'm supposed to just be like, oh, okay, great. Uh, it
Yeah.
doesn't work like
No.
that.
Uh-uh.
So,
Not at all. Not
yeah.
at all. Oh, this has been great. Thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate this. This was fantastic.
Yay. I
So,
love talking shit. So anytime.
oh, that's cool. Yeah, you love
Oh my
talking shit.
gosh, I know, that's hilarious. I didn't even do that on purpose.
So, look, if people want to reach out and follow you or connect with you, how can they actually find you? Would you
They
please let
can,
everybody know?
oh my gosh, it's so complicated. Marissa Q Paine. Like you can find me at marissaqpaine.com. MarissAQ for Queen, Paine. I'm at the same handle in all social spaces, and I look forward to talking to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, dear.
Thanks, friend.
Today, I'd like to give a shout out to some of our new members over in the community. You guys are awesome. Welcome aboard. We're happy to have you. We've actually had quite a few join here in the last couple of days, and it's just continuing to grow. And I'm going to talk to you guys about that in just a little bit. We do have some free webinars that are coming up in the actual Facebook group, which is part of this community that I just mentioned. A couple call outs. In the past, on Friday, February the 21st, we did a webinar on how to make the most of your SHRM conference. It's over in the Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. And then also past Wednesday on March 4th, we did a free webinar on the common expensive I-9 mistakes that employers make. Now, upcoming, if you guys are catching this in the morning of Wednesday, March 11th, you still have time to go ahead and sign up on the trainhr.com website, which is a webinar that I've been contracted to speak at called The Coronavirus in the Workplace. And if you cannot attend this session, keep an eye out on the bestpractices.work website under the events tab, because there's going to be a follow-up webinar with some upcoming dates. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for that. Even if you go over and you select the package option to go ahead and listen to it on demand or do it on a replay, you can still get in, but the webinar is actually taking place Wednesday, March 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you got a very narrow window to jump on, but no worries. We're going to actually wind up having an updated version of this webinar coming up in the next couple of weeks. Also, Wednesday, March 18th, if you are in the Virginia Beach area, we've got a live workshop called The Heartbreak of Office Romance. We've got tickets that are on sale over at the bestpractices.work website under the events tab. You can find it there. On Monday, March 23rd, we do have an open complimentary Q&A session over in the Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. And then if you aren't able to attend the March 18th live workshop event in Virginia Beach, we are holding a webinar on the same topic of the heartbreak of office romance, and those tickets are also now on sale as well. And you guys know I love your HR questions. Love, love, love them. Okay? You can submit your questions on the bestpractices.work website by clicking on the podcast link from the menu, and down towards the bottom of the podcast page is a submission form for you to go ahead and post your questions, which may be read aloud and answered on an upcoming episode. So today's question, you're probably going to hear little snippets of coronavirus stuff, and I know a lot of people are really tired of hearing it, and it is dominating everything that we do in our worlds, and it's dominating, the news, the market, everything. And who knew something microscopic, something so small, could have such a big impact? But it does. And so one of the questions that I am getting on a regular basis is, can an employee sue an employer if an employee has contracted the coronavirus at work, and I'm addressing this in the webinars, but I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there because it is like one of the number one questions that I'm getting. And the answer to this is, now bear in mind, I'm not an attorney, right? But in my opinion, there's a couple of things that it has to meet. Number one, the employer has to be doing something so egregious that it would warrant needing to take it to court. It's going to be a hard sell to an attorney. I think it's going to be a hard sell to anybody unless it is amazingly egregious in violation to an individual's welfare. So a lot of companies are investing time, resources, and attention into following the recommendations of the CDC, of OSHA, and everybody's asking, what do I do? What do I do? How do I prepare? So I think it really has to be extremely egregious. Now, in all fairness, because of the nature of the coronavirus and how it spread, just off the top of my thinking, how the heck would you even prove that? Because it can be contracted anywhere. So I think it's a hard sell to the courts, to be completely honest with you. And even after talking to a friend of mine today, completely agreed. So, but again, you know what? Weird stuff happens all the time. And that's one of the benefits. We're in the human business, right? So we keep it we keep it very interesting on a regular basis. But like I said, I think it would be a hard sell to make something like that happen. Okay, so over the past several weeks, you guys have heard me talk a lot about the Next Gen Women in HR community. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and speak from the heart. Again, this is no script. This is a group of people that I have really gotten a chance to get to know. We're growing nicely. We've got actually 2 areas that people can invest their time in. The first one, and this is kind of like the stepping stone into the second one, is our Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. And this is a complimentary website. It's a closed group and it's a moderated group, meaning that nobody can just get in. You really do need to kind of answer you do have to answer the HR questions that we put out there. And it's, and basically what we ask you is, what are you looking to accomplish and what are your greatest challenges? And if you don't answer those questions, then and then you get a message, and then, if you still don't answer them, well then, you're welcome to go ahead and come back on in and fill out those questions again a little bit later. You're welcome to go ahead and rejoin us if you'd like. But it's an awesome place, and what we're really starting to do is starting to build momentum, and every Monday we do a kickoff, and like the first Monday of every month we do an HR case study of some kind. The second Monday of every month we talk about branding yourself as a professional. The third Monday of every month, actually coming up as networking. So we talk about how to network yourself as a professional, and then the last Monday of every month is we talk about how to take care of yourself. How do you care for everything that you have to deal with, but also invest time to care for yourself? And then if it's an odd duck month, like the month of March, like now we got 5 weeks in the month of March, so we have 5 Mondays, then we actually get an opportunity to put a poll out and the tribe decides, and that's actually the name of it. So it's all dependent upon what's important to the tribe at that time. There's some good information that's coming about. You see me throwing out updates, suggestions, and you know what? We do something fun almost every day. So it's a cool place to come. It's a place where you can ask questions, you can get information, and really kind of start to figure out what direction you want to go. And you know what? Everybody's challenges in this group, because we ask those questions, it gives me an understanding of where kind of everybody is. It's all over the place, and it's pretty awesome. So it's a new group. It's only been around for 2 months, and we're at about 110 members right now, which is pretty fantastic for such a short period of time. And then we have the Next Gen Women in HR membership site. Now this can be found over on the bestpractices.org website, and we've got some new designs coming out for this. So there's going to be some great information that's going to come down. First off, it has a lot of really good information that will direct you to the most point blank pieces of information in HR that you could possibly need. It reduces the need to do a lot of searching. We do have a Q&A chat forum that's in there, and it's a really good place for people to post sensitive questions and kind of get feedback from other members of the group who are enrolled. And it's also extremely affordable because this is designed for one of two people. It's designed for those in the breakthrough group, are individuals who are interested in getting into the field of HR, and they just need access and they need that level of support that matches where they are. Then you've got the enterprise group, and then the enterprise group is slightly more advanced, and there's access to different types of case study information, different types of legal information that really is more appropriate for somebody who's been in the field of HR for at least 3 years or has had what I refer to as a richer HR experience. The awesome part about this is that it's extremely affordable, and I mentioned that earlier. It literally is, for each of these groups, the same amount that you would spend for less than 3 cups of coffee a month. So in the breakthrough group, it's only $9 a month, and then on the enterprise group, it's only $15 a month. And I deliberately made this affordable because I understand that, you know what, not everybody has the money to be able to support their own education. So I totally get it. And that's the reason why we wanted to make it affordable. So there's also videos, there's tools that are out there, and again, it's just a great place. But I've got designs. I've got designs for this. So we got it up and running, and it's really starting to take off. And so far, I've gotten some really fantastic feedback on it, which I'm very excited about. So look, if I learned how to do this stuff first, and then I studied it. That's just how my life worked out. But when I was going through it, I did not have somebody that was able to help shepherd me through this. I just kept my eyes and my ears peeled. So I know what it feels like to be out there trying to search for the answers. I know what it's like to have questions and you don't know where to go, or you don't have anybody that you can go to. And I even know what it feels like that when you do have a group of people that go to, you don't necessarily feel like you get the support. And so that's what this is all about. This is all about getting you the support that you need in order to be extremely successful. So here's what you do. To go to these places, first you can go to the Facebook site, and that's the Next Gen Women in HR Facebook group. And yes, it is branded to women, but you know what? We've got some awesome men in the group. People that I've been having conversations with and been in discussions with. We love our men too, so you guys are welcome to join us. This is not just an exclusive to women, but HR is a feminine driven industry, so kind of makes sense. But nonetheless, we love you guys. We'd like to have you in as well. So Facebook group, Next Gen Women in HR, check that box off. The second place to go is when you want to do that deeper dive and you want to invest in you and your skill set, then go ahead and jump in on the Next Gen Women in HR member site, which you can find in the bestpractices.work website. Click on Next Gen Women in HR. Up at the top, it's actually coincidentally right next to the coronavirus link, so you can find us over there. It's a cool tool, and can't wait to see you guys over there. So that's what we got for this episode. If you are interested in following me and all the antics and everything that I'm up to, you guys are welcome to hit me up on Instagram and Facebook at Best Practices in HR. You can also find me on Instagram at Brenda the HR Lady. Over on YouTube and LinkedIn, you can find me at Brenda Neckfottle, and last name is spelled N-E-C-K, like the thing you want to choke. V as in Victor, A-T-A-L. And again, you can go ahead and hit me up at the bestpractices.work website. Up at the top, go ahead and click on Connect at the top of the page and fill out the information, and that's where you can get my best practices delivered directly to your inbox. So guys, look, have an awesome rest of the week. Look, this coronavirus thing, it's changing, and I'm pretty committed to making sure that any new things, any new tools, it's out there. It's over on the bestpractices.work website. It's here in the podcast. Anything that I can do to bring it forward that will help employers figure out this unique issue and what they should do. And then also, you know what? Give some peace of mind. Because right now we're in a position where there's a lot of hurry up and wait. There's a lot of trying to figure out what to do. It's stressful. It's frustrating. There's a lot of concerns around business continuity. And you know what? It's all valid stuff. But you know what? We do have the ability to do some things that will help mitigate that risk. And, you know what? We just have to buckle up and ride this one out. And I think in the long haul, we'll actually be okay. It's just this big old disruption in our world, and it sounds like a needle dragging across a record. So hang in there. It will be fine. It will. We'll get through this just like we've gotten through all other life challenges, because that's the good news. You have made it 100% of your bad days. And I'm going to leave you guys with that one. So y'all have a really great one. I'm out of here, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.